everyone, and welcome to Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails, the weekly podcast that helps you grow your business, improve your life, and enjoy yourself along the way. I'm your host, Alan Langer, and every week we try to bring you the best thought leaders, the best business leaders, and the best minds out there to help you succeed in business and in life. So sit back, relax, grab your pad, your pen, and your favorite beverage, and enjoy the next episode of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. This is episode number 2. I am Alan Langer of the 7 Secret Center for Sales and Marketing, and following up a great opening podcast, I've even got a better one for you today. I am proud and very, very honored to have someone who I would call famous. She's actually LinkedIn fame and acting fame and singing fame. Tsufit joins us today, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio of Tsufit, and then I'm going to let her talk about how great she is herself, because she is really such a great, really a brilliant person to have on this podcast. She's going to have a lot of good stuff for us today. So Tsufit has been featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur Magazine. She's the author of Step Into the Spotlight, and she has an email of the same name that she gets out once every couple of weeks, and I love that email. It's one of the few emails that I get on a regular basis that I actually read, so thank you for that. She's endorsed, and this book is endorsed by some big names like Tom Peters, the BNI founder Ivan Meisner, Les Brown, to name a few. She's a singer, she's an actress, she's a comedian. She's appeared on national television, on commercials internationally. She just has it all, and she's been doing this since 2002, helping companies and individuals with their marketing, with their coaching, and with getting noticed. So hopefully, Tsufit, I didn't leave anything out. Welcome to the show.
Well, not only did you not leave anything out, you added something, which is that I'm famous, which is not even remotely true, but thank you for that.
Well, in my mind, you're famous, so how's that?
I'll take it.
So please tell our audience just a little bit about you, and really one of your things in your bio said that you had a unique story, or one of the things in the Entrepreneur Magazine said you had a unique story. So I'm very curious on what that means.
Well, it's just really that, I wanted to be an actress pretty much my whole life, a singer since I was a kid. But my parents wanted me to do something practical, like be, a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or at least worst comes to worst, marry one, right? And so I became a lawyer. I was always interested in, I was in debate club in high school, whatever. But I used to also do the high school musical, whatever. And I dreamed of being like, the actresses at that time. But I was practical, so I went to law school, became a lawyer. I had 4 daughters in 4 years. Boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
Then one day after practicing for about 10 years and after having all the kids, I kind of had that Peggy Lee moment, that is that all there is moment. And I said to myself, you know what, if I'm not going to go for it now, like when, right? So I left the law, kept the kids, and decided to follow my dream, which was to be a singer and actress. I hadn't really been thinking about being a comedian, but I always got cast in the comedic roles whenever I did anything. So I ended up going to like Yuck Yucks on an open mic night with a guitar. And, I knew I could sing. I didn't know if I could make them, laugh outside of singing, but I came up with a little comic intro, a little comic outro. Next thing you know, I'm on national TV in a comedic role. I'm doing stand-up on national TV. Just a little here and there, not ever regularly.
But did you leave your job without actually having anything specific to do?
Yes, but I wish I could take the credit for that move, because I probably wasn't brave enough to do. When you have 4 kids and a mortgage at the peak of the market, that would have been a little bit, if I were British, I would say foolhardy. No, I didn't.
I was going to say, wow.
Yeah, so I didn't. That was 2 weeks after my 4th daughter was born.
Jeez.
I was given the wonderful news that, they didn't tell me, but they were thinking, who knows, she could come back in 9 months with the 5th one, which was entirely possible because, my track record that was kind of my MO, right? Like I had my first baby almost 9 months to the day from when I joined the firm. Now, I was not pregnant when I joined the firm, but like 9 months later, poof, number 1, right? Year later, number 2, number 3, number 4. So they were thinking, okay, we got to get this notice in before she reports number 5.
Yeah.
And because it was a small firm, I was the first pregnant lawyer they'd ever had. Immediately after I had my second child, the only other woman lawyer had the audacity to also become pregnant. And so, yeah, they were kind of, and so that's what happened. And I thought, you know what, for a little while, I thought I'd look for a law job. And then I thought, you know what, this is kind of my chance. I'll figure, brand new paper to write on, brand new beach to walk on. So I kind of made it up and just started coaching people at first to get publicity and get noticed. And because I was always pretty good at that. And then it kind of morphed into the step into the spotlight thing, because, it's one thing to, I told you something not exactly right. Before I was teaching about publicity, I was teaching people to follow that dream. And that was my first coaching business, because I had left law and did the singing thing, right? So I did that for about 7 years, singing and acting and comedy. And then other people came to me and said, well, that was gutsy. Like, how'd you do it? And can you show me how to do it? So I started coaching other people to do that. And then I realized, well, yeah, it's one thing to do it, but if you can't feed your 4 kids, like, what's the point? So Alan, between you and I, they actually technically like to be fed more than once a week. I found that out. So,
that is a pain in the neck about kids. I have
total pain. So I really had to make money doing this, and I figured it out. I figured, you don't only have to follow that dream. You have to figure out how to step into the spotlight and monetize that dream. Like, figure out how to make people, attract people so that they'll pay you money for whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
And so that's why I ended up morphing my coaching practice in that direction. And, as you mentioned earlier, I wrote the book, which is really a guide to getting noticed in business. Step into the spotlight. And
you did this right around 2002 area?
No. The book came out around 2008. And then about 5 years after that, I was sitting around on January 1st thinking, okay, what should I do this year differently than I've done before? And I thought, this LinkedIn thing, it's pretty darn boring. But I had a client who was very interested in LinkedIn. She was more, quote unquote, professional than me. I don't love that word. So a coach always has to be one step ahead of the client. So I thought, okay, I better throw myself in a little bit more if that's what we're going to focus on. So on January 1st, 7 years ago, I launched the Step into the Spotlight community on LinkedIn. We're now over 12,000 entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches, experts, influencers. I know people hate that word, but they truly are. Media, a lot of media in there as well. And, we have the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine in there, and Michael Gerber and Al Reese, who wrote Positioning. And I mean, if you're a marketing person, you'll know a lot of the names. Ivan Meisner, who started BNI, is in there.
Yes.
So a lot of people that people want to hang out with. And that kind of brings us to this illustrious day when I'm sitting with Alan Langer on his podcast, which is the climax of my career to date.
Well, again, I am really honored that you took the time out of your busy schedule to help out a guy who's starting his podcast. I've been doing marketing sales for almost 30 years, so I do have a little, my teeth are cut a little bit, but I've been wanting to do a podcast for a while, and I've just been LinkedIn for me over the last year and a half is just, there's so many brilliant people that I just want to talk to and just soak up their information. And this is the way, I want to do it. And I want to get that information out to other people. So thank you again.
For doing away, baby.
So that is quite a unique story. So tell me about, so I get these emails from you, and literally every single one of them is not only on point, but you go, that's right. Or like, wow, what a great point she's making to every single one I get. Where do you get the inspiration for that? Where do they come from?
Okay. So, and just for your listeners, it's called Spotlight Secrets. If you go to spotlightsecrets.com, you can also have them. It's not just for Alan. Spotlightsecrets.com. So what happened was, when I was first kind of getting a little bit more into this online space, I went and I was thinking of writing a book. I went to a a conference in Florida, and one of the speakers there said, you got to build a list, got to build a list, got to build a list, got to, list is, content is getting, got to build a list, all the cliches, right? So I said, yeah, okay, yeah, it makes sense to me. Because they tell this cliche story about, I think John Lennon needed some money for something. So he says to McCartney, okay, let's write ourselves a pool, like write a song to be able to buy a pool. But the only way that nowadays you can do that is by sending out the notice of your song so that they buy it so you can buy the pool. So, and you hear all these stories of people, I had a tax bill of $40,000, so I sent an email to my list and, 5 seconds later I had it or whatever. So a lot of the stories are overdone, but a lot of my clients have come from that email list, right? So you have to give people something in order to get it. Everybody knows about autoresponders. So the idea, I had seen a guy who had 11 tips on something. And I thought, that's a good number because 10 is kind of overdone. So I came up with 11 secrets of the spotlight on how to stand out in just 30 seconds, which is one of my areas of expertise, one of the things that I teach about and I have a program about. So in the olden days, you remember when you could actually get within 6 feet of people? People used to go to these things called networking meetings.
I remember those.
BNI, Chamber of Commerce, Board of Trade, whatever it is. And they used to stand up and bore you for 30 seconds and sit down, and the next one would stand up and bore you for 30 seconds. So when I showed up there, I saw I get the mic for 30 seconds. I'm going to get some laughter. I'm going to get some clients. And I did. I turned it into a mini show, and people said, how'd you do that? So when it came time to build this list thing, and they said, you can send out a white paper. I mean, I didn't know what a white paper was, and I wouldn't know how to write one. And it sounded way too serious for me. So I thought, but I can share some secrets about how to stand out. So I had 11 of them. Okay. I just checked today. There are now 131 over a 3-year period. But I had 11 initially. And at the end of 11, I stopped, and that was it. So then I'm at a conference in Dallas, and this woman comes up to me and says, hey, Tsufit, I loved your email tips, but I got the last one, and I haven't heard from you since. What's the matter? Why aren't you sending me anymore? And I said, look, I promised you 11. I don't want to keep bugging people because I hate, drip marketing and bugging people and chasing. Right.
Yeah.
So I said, it's enough. And she said, no, I don't want them to stop. So I came back and I wrote an email to my list that said, I was at a conference in Dallas and I ran into this person and she said she didn't want them to. So that was my 12th email telling that story. So I said, so if you're like her and you want them to continue, fine, stay on, it will continue. And so now it's sort of become I'm chasing my tail kind of thing, because I think now people enter at different times, right?
Right.
So I don't know what day you're on, but whatever day you're on a different day than somebody else, right?
Yep.
But at one point at about midnight, I mistakenly deleted my whole list, which was not fun.
Oh.
And somehow after about 2-3 weeks of begging them and crying to them and whatever, I got my provider to put everybody back, but they could only do it on one list. I couldn't segment the way I had before. So I put them all back on this main spotlightsecrets.com list. And so most people are at the same point. So now I feel like I can feel their breath on my, because there are people who've been on there really for 10 years, but they went back on again recently, and they're approaching the 3-year mark. And I have to come up with one more. So it comes from one day I open my freezer. I don't know if you got to this one yet. And I see a bag, and it's some kind of rye bread. And there's this whole story on the back of the package about rye bread. So I take a screenshot, or I think in those days I had to scan it on my scanner. And I made that be, one of the secrets. Or I'm in Las Vegas and I see flip-flops and they're like $2,000. And I said, $2,000 for flip-flops? I mean, that's the thing. Or I see, what's that model that's married to the guy who was in Officer and a Gentleman? Cindy Crawford.
Richard Gere?
Yeah, Cindy Crawford, right.
Cindy Crawford, yeah.
Right. So she's got this commercial about some kind of glop with Dr. Chibag in France, and there's this melon, a certain melon. And, I was taught by Dan Kennedy, who used to advise Gunther Rinker and all the, I'm like, this slop, that slop, it's all the same, don't sue me. I don't know if it's the same slop, but I'm guessing it's my personal opinion, and not to be held accountable for my personal opinion, that it's all the same stuff, right? And I don't think Dr. Chibag's melon, but the thing is, Cindy Crawford and her fancy face couldn't sell it by itself. So they had to add this mysterious, not only a mysterious French doctor, but a melon. Okay.
But a melon.
So I thought that's worth writing about. Right. And asking my audience, like, well, what's your melon? What's your secret thing? Anybody can do that.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. What I love about what you do, and I write about this in my book. My book's, I'm a storyteller. I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories.
What's the name of your book, Alan?
It's called The 7 Secrets to Selling More by Selling Less. It's about becoming the salesperson that people actually want to talk to, and not the salesperson that people run from or hate.
By the way, that was very smooth of me, right? I got you to plug your book without you appearing to have plugged your book.
You did. I thank you for that. Right? But what so many marketers don't understand, or even salespeople, is they get right into their stuff. They get right into their product, right into what they're pitching. And the ones you read are the ones that tell a story, and you always are telling a story in your emails. And that's what I always try to train, and that's what I tell people, and you do it brilliantly.
Well, thank you very much. And very often those stories start like on a Kleenex box or a back wrapper of something while I'm in the car at a red light. Like I get an idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
One day I was driving and I see this like 97-year-old woman behind the wheel, a blonde. And then I see the side of her car, this young, pretty realtor, right? And I look back and forth between the picture and the 97-year-old lady, and I realize it's the same woman.
Oh, wow.
She's not really 97, but anyway, she's using an old picture. And so if I'm not mistaken, I think there's one about that, or if there isn't, there should be. And there's one in my book about that for sure. I wrote about it in the book. So I just get the ideas from real life.
Well, I've got one actually, and this has to do with a little bit of the COVID stuff. So I'm a huge Starbucks fan. I do a lot of my writing in coffee shops and Starbucks all over. I'm in Rhode Island, so in the state of Rhode Island. So pretty much I have this kind of unique FJ Cruiser truck. So everyone in Starbucks, for the most part, know me. They know my name. I'm in there all the time. Well, they opened a new Starbucks right around the corner from me in my town. And it opened before the restrictions were being lifted, but they opened just in the drive-through. So I got my stuff and I pulled around front, and I'm sitting in the front parking lot right by the door, borrowing I'm stealing their Wi-Fi. And all of a sudden, out comes 3 people from the Starbucks. It was 3 ladies. One was the manager, one was her assistant, and one was a barista. And they knock on my window, and I said, "What's up?" And the manager said, "I just heard that you are a very big Starbucks fan in the state of Rhode Island, and I wanted to come out and thank you for being a customer."
Wow.
And right, that blew me away. I was speechless. And then
you probably thought they're saying, "Why are you stealing our Wi-Fi?"
Well, I bought coffee, so I figured that was at least the price to get some of the Wi-Fi. But I was so blown away by them actually taking a minute out of their day, walking outside and saying, "Thank you for being a customer," that I got home that afternoon and I do these video tips on LinkedIn, and I did a video tip on it saying unexpected appreciation for customers is so, like, it just blew me away. I'll never forget that. So I know exactly what you mean. You get these ideas throughout the day and you just got to pay attention for them.
Something very similar. Mari Smith, who's big in the social media space, especially with Facebook, tells a story. I think it was Alaska Airlines. She was on Alaska Airlines, if it's Alaska Airlines, and she was tweeting that, she left her cord somewhere and she can't charge her phone or whatever. She gets off the airplane and somebody from Alaska Airlines hands her a cord. So somebody had read it and now she put it in her book. Like, so this I don't know if I have the airline right, but she actually immortalized this little story in her book. So it's stories are everywhere. And, more entrepreneurs, I don't know why they don't use them. Like this morning, I had a client who's giving a speech tomorrow, and I had him do the whole long speech for me, and then I critiqued it. And one of the things that, I think it needs more of is stories, right? Because, professionals, and I kind of, air quotes when I say that, they are so uptight about appearing to be professional. Like they're so worried about being professional that they think that means that they have to check their personality at the door. They have to check their color at the door, their ethnicity, their flavor, their accent. I mean, people come to me and, I've got this accent. Are you kidding me? Use it.
Yeah, that's you.
Like, why would you not? I had one client years ago who, she was German, and she was telling me a story about her mother, and I was helping her with a 30-second infomercial, and I said, imitate your mother in the thing, like do it in her accent. And she said, no, I could never do that. Like that's not professional. What if I said, okay, you're paying me, so I don't know. It's up to you. Do whatever you want. Next day she says, okay, shut up, Tsufit. I did what you said, and everybody loved it, and you were right, and whatever. But people are so afraid of it.
Yeah, and that takes me to my next point, because it's something. I do this networking group every Friday, and we have speakers and stuff, and one of the speakers was talking about putting yourself out there. She's a pretty high profile LinkedIn person, and I'm like, that's what people are afraid to do. They're afraid to put themselves out there. They're afraid to do a LinkedIn video or some sort of tip, or even when they're giving a speech, to tell a story, because they're so afraid of what people are going to think. And when you do it, once you do it, you get more comfortable at it, but you realize that people really enjoy it. It's kind of opposite of what you think.
Yeah, well, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. I mean, if you put out a boring video.
Well, of course, right.
The thing is, there's two separate issues that you've identified. One is that people are afraid to do it at all, like to do a video or to do whatever. And that's one issue. But the second issue is they're afraid to show any of themselves beyond what is immediately relevant to the transaction. So if you're a salesperson and you're selling, whatever widget or whatever it is that you're selling, right? You're selling a waffle iron. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the waffle iron, right?
Right.
But if you threw in a story about how, the Nike founder actually founded Nike, by taking a pair of running shoes and putting them on his wife's waffle iron and whatever, which apparently is the story that you read if you read, I think it's Nike or one of those shoes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the
I think it's Nike, yep.
Yeah. So that would be a conversation that would, get the prospect to start laughing and because a prospect, most people don't like to be sold to, we know this. And so their guard is up, and humor is one of the many, it's not the only way, but it's one of many ways that you can sneak past people's barriers. That's one reason that, these people were going to these networking meetings for 5-10 years and not getting clients. And I show up and then, let me tell you something, Alan. I went to when I first started going to like the Chamber of Commerce, whatever, the first 6 months I had people coming up to me and taking me aside quietly and giving me really good advice. These people in suits. Tsufit, you really should dress like you should wear a suit, and you should dress more professionally. Because I used to wear this like ethnic, they didn't talk about cultural appropriation those days. So, I'd wear like an Asian silk top or whatever. Like I love things from all different cultures and ethnicities, and I own a lot of them because I like them and they're colorful. So I'd wear that. And then I would say something, a little bit amusing or funny or not directly. And they said, and you should talk like this and you should look like this. 6 months after all this advice that I got, they had me on stage teaching them how to do it wrong too. Because they saw that I was getting lineups and that they'd been going for 5 years. So people are so afraid of, going beyond the boundaries of what is considered professional, what is considered, like we have these ideas of how we should do something. Well, you guys got a president elected mainly because he understood that people are sick of the way you should do it, right? There was a whole lineage of politicians, and there was going to be another one from that lineage where it was being done the way it should be done. Right. A learned person, lots of experience, he wrote millions of books, whatever. And then you get a guy and he speaks at grade 8 level and he says all these, things and out of nowhere, and people just eat it up. And whether you love the person or you hate the person, and you have both kinds in your country and around the world, it doesn't matter whether you love or hate him, because you know what? I saw this interesting documentary on one of the fake news shows, and it was actually a scientific study of people's brains. And this was at the time that there were 17 candidates for the nomination, for the Republican nomination, right? And he was just one of them.
Right.
And they canvassed people's reactions to when people spoke. And it didn't matter who the person being tested liked or didn't like. Everybody's brain lit up in this amazing way when the current president was speaking as a candidate. And the other people, even if they loved the other guy and was going to vote for the other guy or woman, it didn't have that same reaction. So what this proves is that it doesn't matter whether people like what you're saying or they don't like it, but at least they know you exist.
Mhm.
And it's always good in marketing, as you know, to polarize your audience anyway.
Right. Oh yeah. And it's also, there's a couple of points that you just reminded me of it. And one, I actually just did a video on this one the other day. It's I call it becoming the expert. It's not that unique of a concept, but if you are perceived as the expert in your field or in your product or your service, even if you're not, if you're perceived as an expert, you're just going to get more business. Like, I use the example, if I wanted to buy a lampshade and I had two business cards and one said Joe Smith, lampshade consultant, the other one said Steve Smith, senior lampshade consultant, who am I calling? I'm calling the guy who says senior. I have no idea if either one of them is an expert or not. So the perception is there, and then the clarity of a message. And Trump had the message of, make America great again. That's what everybody remembered.
Alan, page 12 of Step into the Spotlight book, which it sounds to me like maybe you haven't read yet, but you must. Page 12.
I have it. It came 2 days ago. It arrived.
Okay, so turn to page 12, because there it says exactly what you just said. An expert is not someone who knows what he knows. An expert is someone who is known for knowing what he knows.
Yes. I like that. That's a great way to put it. Yep.
Or she.
Or she.
Or he, she. Gotta be correct.
And for me, have you heard of Donald Miller and his story brand concept and the stuff that he's written about?
The story brand name sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, so he focuses on clarity in messages, and if you confuse, you lose, and the clearer your message is, the easier. He's like, don't make it hard for people to buy your product. Don't give them so much information that they can't decipher enough. To buy something. So clarity is a huge fact.
Not only clear, but I was just telling a client immediately before our podcast today, clear, and narrow. Right?
Yes.
Because I mean, I help people write their books as well, and I coach them to write their books. After my book came out, a lot of people asked me to do that. And everybody wants to write the general book, the vague book, the broad book, and the book for everybody. And I say, no, like, you want a guy or a woman of this age, and you want to know why is that person thirsty, hungry for whatever your message is, and it's got to be narrow, and it's got to be so. Like, for example, I saw a book recently that really makes my point well. It's called, and I think the guy who wrote it is a member of my Step in the Spotlight group, although I can't remember his name, but his title was something like Why I Hate My 28-Year-Old Boss. It is a completely brilliant title, right?
Brilliant.
Like he could have called it, age or gender discrimination, age discrimination in the 21st century, or ageism, or some other boring kind of thing, right?
Right.
But he called it something that anybody who's 50 and in a job, or looking for a job, or 60, or even in their 40s, and they've got this little schmendrick, this little 22-year-old, who just started this new startup. And did
you say schmender?
Schmendrick. It's an old Yiddish.
Schmendrick. I like that.
A muzzle, like on. Remember on Laverne and Shirley in the opening credits, they had Shlomo,
Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, right? Anyway, it's this little person, this little nothing, who has, I'm not putting down millennials, I have horror of my own. But what I wanted to say was that the title perfectly encapsulates the feeling. I'll give you another example. I met this guy at a conference in LA. He wrote a book called How Come That Idiot's Rich and I'm Not? I cannot think of a more brilliant title.
That is a great title. Wow.
Because instead of calling it, how to get ahead, financial planning for midlife, there are a million things you could call it.
Yeah.
That and who knows what's between the covers? It might be the same as every other book, but the truth is it's the cover and the endorsements that sell a book, right?
Yep.
And that's what I keep trying to tell my clients who keep fighting me on this. Every single day they fight me on this, that, but I want it to be broader. I want it to be more people. I don't want to offend anybody. You don't want to offend anybody. There's a guy named Larry Winget, and he calls himself a motivational, he calls himself an irritational speaker. instead of an inspirational speaker, and like motivational pit bull. I forget exactly what it is, but he is, I won't say obnoxious, but the way he speaks to his audience is very in your face. Like, I think one of his book titles is something like, I could be getting it wrong, but it's along these lines, like, shut up, it's your own damn fault, or something like that, right?
Right.
So some people will hate it and be offended by it, and other people will think it's brilliant. I'll give you one more example, and then I'll shut up in case you want to ask me anything.
No, keep going.
There's a company in the U.S. that sells fans for arenas, right? And they used to be called, I don't know, A&E HVAC. Who knows what those kind of companies are called? Something boring that you would never remember.
Right.
And they had this marketing person come in, and the person overheard a statement and said, well, why don't you change your business name to that, what that person called your company? And they said, we can never do that. Well, the suggestion was to change it to Big Ass, ASS, Fans. Man, you sell some big ass fans. And what they did was they made their logo like a donkey, an ass, right?
Yeah.
So a donkey, not the other thing.
Right.
And so many people are offended by that, because I think they're somewhere in New England, probably around your area somewhere. So many people were offended by it that it caused a big uproar. Well, what does a big uproar cause? It caused the BBC in England to broadcast the story. It got a ton of free publicity. And the company publishes both the kudos of people who like them on their website, but they also publish the I would never do business with your unprofessional company. They post those as well. And it's brilliant.
That's brilliant. That's
polarize your audience, baby.
There was a guy, I read an article about a month ago about Angie's List, or I'm sorry, not Angie's List, Yelp. Right. And restaurant owners are so afraid. I mean, 5-star reviews are everything. I read another article said 1 star is equivalent to losing $40,000 in revenue or something like that. When a restaurant has star ratings. But this one guy was so upset at Yelp because apparently Yelp charges you and you can move up the rankings or something like that. He was claiming that they kind of hold restaurant owners hostage to get moved up in the lists. So instead of publishing the 5-star rankings, he actually asked people, he goes, rate me terribly. Please rate me terribly. He put a big sign up saying, I want 1 star. And he got so much publicity for it. He got articles written. He got people saying, screw Yelp. And he got all of these 1-star ratings, and he got his business tripled in 2 weeks. It was a brilliant move by him. I don't even think he was just doing it because he was mad at Yelp, and it just turned into this brilliant marketing campaign that he did by mistake.
Speaking of being mad about something turning into a brilliant marketing campaign, he's also in our group. I think his name's Dave Carroll. He's on an airline, and I don't remember if it was American Airlines or Delta. I really should get my story straight. But anyway, he's on an airline.
And great, at least.
And they wrecked his guitar.
Ooh.
So, and he tried to get compensation. He's a musician. He's Canadian. Tried to get some compensation. They wouldn't listen to him, whatever. So he gets home and he writes the song. United breaks guitars or Delta breaks. I really shouldn't badmouth the company. But anyway, whatever the blank here airline breaks guitars. That was the name of the song. And it's a hilarious, hilarious song with the 3 amigos. Anyway, it's really funny. You should look it up on YouTube. Whatever breaks guitars, the song.
Writing it down right now.
Try United, but I'm not sure if it's that. Anyway, and so what happened was, not only he got like a quadrillion, like noticed by everybody. He not only, so he got noticed for that. He got noticed as a musician because, frankly, I'd never heard of the guy before that.
Right.
And now he actually wrote a book, and it might be the same name. I'm not sure.
Really?
But I think it's a customer service book United. I just looked it up. Okay, Delta, I'm sorry. It's United. And I'm not saying, United, that you personally break guitars. And it was in 2009. It's in the country genre. And it's a trio of protest songs by this guy and his band, the Sons of Maxwell, about a broken guitar in 2000.
I've heard of them. Sons of Maxwell? Yeah, I've heard of them, yeah.
And it says here, did it really, Huffington Post Business wrote about them. United breaks guitars. Did it really cost the airline $180 million? I don't know if it did or it didn't. But that's the lack of compassion, created And let me just see, I think you wrote a book too. So anyway, you can definitely, it's called United Breaks Guitars, The Power of One Voice in the Age of Social Media. That's the name of his book.
Gotcha.
It's got a picture of a guitar on it with an airline on top of it. So, I mean, talk about making lemonade from lemons, right? Like whoever is listening to this podcast today, whatever your situation, good, bad, whatever it is, all you really need is a little bit of creativity to turn it into something.
That's Maya Angelou said that you can never run out of creativity. The more you have, the more you'll get. I believe that's what her quote was. And I saw that the other day. So that, you're 1,000% correct. All right. I'm not going to keep it too much longer. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I'm sure you don't want to be doing that. But I want to ask you, you're a superstar on LinkedIn. If someone's listening to this, give them your piece of advice on what they should be doing on LinkedIn to get noticed, to up their game. What would be your one or two piece of advice that you would give out for someone starting out on LinkedIn? Okay,
first of all, it would be ungracious of me to argue with your description, superstar on LinkedIn. I don't know that people would really consider me to be that, but I'll take it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I've done, whether it's superstarish or not, was I decided that I wanted to build a community around my brand, right? So my book is called Step Into the Spotlight. My 10-week program is called Step Into the Spotlight. My LinkedIn group is called Step Into the Spotlight, and it uses the same logo as my book. So it doesn't have to be on LinkedIn. You could do it on LinkedIn. You could do it on Facebook. You could do it somewhere else. And it's a lot harder to do it now than it was 7 years ago. And even 7 years ago, it's still pretty hard even then, because LinkedIn doesn't help out much with notifications. The technology behind LinkedIn is not, I don't think, as robust as Facebook I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But for me personally, it's taken a ton of work to do that. But what I would say is make sure that when you comment, it's in the form that people will engage with it. So, for example, we have a rule in my group, and I probably told you this when you joined the group, Alan, that we're a group mostly of experts, right? Mm-hmm. And media and entrepreneurs. And so if all 12,000 of them posted an article or something about how great they were, or something about, or just even a piece of advice about this or that, it would be like every other LinkedIn group where everybody's talking at everybody, right? And the same thing, even if you don't want to start a LinkedIn group, but if you're just posting in the updates or whatever, make it something that gives people the option of engaging with you, right? Ask a short one-line question. Don't put up people do put up articles and they teach stuff, but then you'll see they get 3 people seeing it and 1 putting a comment. What I would suggest is to do that, and also to engage with other people's content. So I had a choice when I started my LinkedIn group, Alan. There are 2 kinds of groups on LinkedIn and on Facebook. One is kind of like the fish in a pond approach, where, those salmon where you go and you pay some money and there's a little pond there full of salmon and you put your fishing rod in there. You're going to leave that day with salmon. You're going to go home and show your spouse, look at all the salmon I caught, honey, right? As opposed to going to a real river where maybe you wouldn't catch anything, right?
Right.
A lot of these LinkedIn groups are like that, where the leaders stuff them with their ideal person, ideal client, which makes a lot of sense. And then they try to be the guru to that group. What I chose to do instead, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way, but what I chose instead was I invited my competition. I invited people way more famous than me and way more renowned. I mean, Al Rees, who wrote Positioning, he's world famous. He's written a ton of books. He's like one of the top 100 of the 20th century in terms of, he writes for Ad Age, the Entrepreneur Magazine editor-in-chief, like Marshall Goldsmith, like the who's who of Whoville, because I want it to be a destination that people want to go. So I don't make it all about me. And the other thing I do is I try to support other people in their efforts, because they say people like when you say their name. What people like even more than saying their name is when you promote them, right? Yeah. Yep. So that is the best way to get noticed, really, is to promote other people, because the next thing that happens is they're doing a podcast, they're doing a Tele Summit where they've got 20 speakers and they want you to be one of them. And then you get the, other people's audiences, OPA effect, which is really what it's all about, right? If you want to get a following, I'm not going to go out and stand on a street corner and try to find a follow. I'll tell you a brief story. I was in Las Vegas speaking at a conference the day before the International Coaches Conference. Michael Gerber was also speaking there, and James Malinchuk, a few other people. Mm-hmm. And I noticed, and I said it to the audience when I spoke that day, if I went out into the streets of Las Vegas with my book in my hand, I probably wouldn't be able to sell even one, right? Because people are, and it's not because there aren't a lot of people there. There are. It's not because there aren't a lot of business people there. There are. It's because they're not sifted and sorted. They're not pre-sifted and pre-sorted on the street. But you walk into the Four Seasons Hotel where I spoke, and you go in that conference room where I spoke, there may only be 100 people, but each person, each of that 100 is my ideal client, right? Or my ideal colleague, or somebody who can invite me to speak. So you want to hang out with other people who have audiences.
Yes. I learned that from a writing standpoint, because like I told you in the beginning, I consider myself a writer. I've always loved writing. So when I wrote this book, this is my first business book, I made the mistake the first 4 or 5 months after it was published, I signed up for all of these writing conferences. And I'm sitting there with a business book next to some guy who wrote about a trilogy of a dragon and this other romance writer next to me. And I wasn't selling anything. All these other people were selling 30, 40, 50 books a day. And I'm sitting there and I realized this is not my audience. Business people aren't coming to these book, author events. So I started taking my book to actual business networking events, sales events, and that's where I found my audience and realized, I kind of felt silly, like, how did I not know that at the beginning? And you learn as you go. So,
it's true. And even though it does sound obvious in hindsight, you know how they have those steak of the month? I mean, there are companies that sell steaks by mail, as weird as that sounds, right? But if you go to the Vegetarian Society annual meeting, you're not going to sell any subscriptions there. It doesn't matter how good your pitch is. Like I told you, I teach this whole 4-week course about the 30-second infomercial. It doesn't matter how good you are at it if you're in front of the wrong audience.
Yeah, yes.
So you have to figure out where are your people and what do they want and how to interrupt whatever they're thinking about in a way that you can, there's this quote about entering the conversation going on in your prospect's mind. I mean, that's what we need to do.
Well, Tsufit, like I said, I can talk to you for the rest of the day, but we're at 45, 46 minutes now. I think we're gonna end this here. I really, again, appreciate you coming on. What would be to tell everyone, obviously you have a pretty, your name is spelled Tsufit, by the way. So if people are looking for you, but tell people how they can find you. What would you suggest if they want to look up your book or look you up on LinkedIn? What do they need to do?
All right. If you want to read the book, go to www.spotlightbook.com. Okay. That will take you straight to Amazon. Please, for the next month or two, order the Kindle version just until this time passes where we can't go to post offices. But it will come from Amazon or buy a used one. If you want the tips, the secrets that Alan was talking about earlier, go to www.spotlightsecrets.com. Spotlightsecrets.com. Put your name and email. A second form will pop up. Make sure you put the email again. If you want to join the group that Alan is a member of, the 12,000 that we were talking about, go to spotlightgroup.biz. Spotlightgroup.biz. And by the way, I'll just give one more tip. Did you notice what I did? I've got Spotlight Group, Spotlight Book, Spotlight this, Spotlight that. I don't take, the whole whatever the long thing is. For $10 at GoDaddy, you get a forward. And then when you're doing a radio or a podcast interview, you can just roll them off. So spotlightgroup.biz, that's the only one that has biz. The other two are .com. And by the way, when you get the free secrets, you can reply to any one of them. And if I like you, maybe I'll reply.
So is the spotlightgroup.biz, that's different from the LinkedIn group, correct? Or is that?
That takes you to the LinkedIn group.
It does. Okay.
Spotlightgroup.biz takes you, it's a forward because I could give you linkedin.com/Tsufit /46932. And who wants to do that on a radio show, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So spotlightgroup.biz. By the way, everyone, I'm going to have all of these in the show notes, all the links to Tsufit's stuff, everything she said, and even some of the things she sent me that she didn't mention right now. So it will all be there. So don't be scrambling around, trying to write something down. It will be in the show notes as soon as this is published. So, Tsufit, any parting words you want to give to our wonderful audience, or any passing thoughts?
Just that you got to know when to sit down and shut up.
Well, that's my cue then. We're going to shut up now, but Tsufit, thank you very much for joining me today for podcast number 2, hopefully one of many. And I'm sure we will talk again in the future. And again, I'm going to continue to enjoy all the stuff that you've been putting out there. So thanks again for joining me.
My pleasure.
Okay, you have a great day. And everyone else, thank you for joining me on this the 7 Secrets podcast for marketing and sales over cocktails. We will see you next week. Take care.